I've been getting a lot of people privately messaging me about their concerns with something that's not really getting a lot of attention in the media and could and likely will have a profound impact on us all soon. And honestly, it's already impacting food production as we speak. So, how vulnerable are we? Should we be concerned? Should we be panicking over this issue? So, let's talk about it.
Download the Start Preparing Survival Guide to help you prepare for any disaster. I'll post a link in the description and comments section below, or visit cityprepping.com/get started for a free guide to help you get started on your journey of preparedness.
If you're new to this channel, my name is Chris, and on this channel we discuss emergency preparedness, aka prepping. So what's the issue here? H5N1, aka avian flu or influenza A. And there's currently an outbreak that's impacting cows and chickens, and it's not getting as much of attention in the news as my community would like. And ironically, I've got a chest cold as I record this video, and hopefully I'm not suffering from this ailment. Now, I talked about this strain of bird flu in a news segment last week, and in the past we've discussed how there's the occasional leap to humans. So how concerned should you be about it, or is this just the media again making something out of nothing? There's really a lot that you need to understand about this to make an informed decision as to how or even if you should be preparing. We'll address these concerns, so definitely stick around to the end as I'll tell you what you should be doing now ahead of everyone else. H5N1. What is it? Let's face it, we are all still a little shell-shocked about viruses after COVID. And the mere mention of a new virus, it puts our senses on full alert. It has us bracing for a here we go again possibility, but how much of a guard should we be putting up right now? And how much of this is just media hype? So first, let's figure out where we are today with the virus. H5N1 is a strain of the influenza virus. And just to get technical for a moment, H5N1 is a influenza A virus, while SARS-CoV-2 is a coronavirus, which is part of a different family. Now, you don't have to understand that to understand that this should provide you with some level of comfort, maybe not a lot, but it's in a completely different family of viruses than the one that caused COVID. And the difference is they don't stop there though. SARS-CoV-2 emerged in late 2019 in Wuhan, China, and was identified as the cause of the novel coronavirus disease, COVID-19. And before its emergence, this specific strain of a coronavirus had not been documented in humans. Now, let me repeat that point again. It had not been documented in humans, and that's why it was labeled novel. Now, H5N1, however, is a variant of the avian flu, and it's an influenza virus which we humans at least have a little experience with. So don't think that we're entirely immune to it or even that it won't be bad if we catch it. Now, having suffered through some earlier forms of influenza A viruses, it may provide some level of immunity or cross protection against other strains of influenza A, including H5N1. And whether previous flu infections protect you from H5N1 really depends on factors like how similar the viruses are, how strong your immune response is, and the specific traits of the virus. Now look, all that to say, we humans, we do have some experience with this virus group, so we do have some built-up communal and vaccinated resistance to it. So think about it this way when we talk about family of viruses. If we were to compare the influenza maybe to our uncle who we know, and he comes to Thanksgiving dinner and we know what to expect. And maybe over here we've got, Corona, who is our second cousin removed from a third marriage, and we have no idea what to expect when they show up at Thanksgiving dinner. That might be the best example of how we would look at this. One we have experience with and the other we don't. And that's about as simple as I can explain it. Now look, you have to understand that this isn't new on the scene. Not really. We've been tracking it for several decades now. And the first documented appearance of H5N1 was in domestic waterfowl in Hong Kong in 1996. In 2023, it reemerged in China and other countries that ended up causing widespread outbreaks in Asia. In 2005, it spread from wild birds to poultry in Africa, the Middle East, and Europe. There have since then been more significant poultry outbreaks, and we have seen it leap to a variety of mammals, including seals, sea lions, foxes, and other carnivores believed to have consumed infected birds. We've also seen some human infections. In 1997, there were 6 confirmed cases, with 1 reported death in humans who had close contact with infected birds. And in the 27 years since then, human infections have grown to almost 900. Now, here's the kicker. roughly half of those 900 have resulted in death. And yes, that's obviously bad, but hear me out for a second. Those infections were relatively contained. They were not the super spreader events like we saw with COVID, where half of a whole school was infected or something like that. Now, additionally, most of these cases involve people directly handling, working with, or in proximity to infected birds, wildfowl, or poultry. Now, H5N1 is primarily a disease of birds, and outbreaks in domestic poultry, they can lead to human exposure through activities such as handling infected birds, slaughtering, or preparing poultry for consumption. And as for the mortality rate, you also have to consider the level of healthcare available. We don't know in those specific cases. We estimate that worldwide seasonal influenza epidemics, which are just all the various strains of the influenza flu, result in about 290 to 650,000 deaths annually. Now, considering that number, 900 infections and half resulting in death over 27 years of age is cause for concern, but does it really rise to the level of panicking? The news today. The most recent round of news stems from an outbreak in dairy cows in Texas, Ohio, Kansas, New Mexico, Michigan, and Idaho. Now here too, it appears to have been introduced by wild birds. And the infected cows were all generally older, so their immune systems can be presumed to be a little weaker. Now the shocking news is that a human who worked with the dairy cows tested positive for H5N1. Now they evidently were working with dairy cows and touched their eye and gave themselves a case of conjunctivitis, which we commonly refer to as pink eye. And while that's all bad, I'm not ready to pack my bags and escape into the countryside while the pandemic ensues, and here is why. The previous human case in the United States involved a person exposed to infected poultry in Colorado in 2022. Now, spread of earlier H5N1 viruses from one infected person to a close contact in the past has happened very rarely and has not led to sustained person-to-person spread. If I were a dairy or a poultry farmer, yeah, I would be concerned for my herds or flocks, my workers, and my own health. But there are precautions that they can and they are taking. If you have your own backyard chicken or waterfowl, then yeah, you should take the same precautions you did during the last outbreak. You should be more vigilant. Although the H5 viruses, they've been found in wild birds and poultry and some mammals and 2 people in the United States, the risk to the general public, it remains low at this moment. But still, I stress again that those working with or around infected animals must take precautions to prevent bird flu. However, we're not seeing the sustained person-to-person spread of this that would cause me to panic. And we're not really seeing bad cases of it in humans very far away outside the folks who have regular contact with animals, farming, ranching, poultry, and the like. Now, look, I'm not diminishing it altogether because it's a severe problem for our food supply. And that's really, I think at this point, the most kind of important thing to focus on. As I mentioned last week, I wouldn't be drinking any raw milk regardless of what assurances were given to you. Something like this could quickly spread through our poultry and cattle industries. And these are industries where animals are typically packed together by the hundreds or thousands for every hour of their life. They are far more susceptible to an outbreak than we are. And just a possibility will generate enough buzz around it that a spike in egg, beef, milk, and poultry prices is inevitable. And that's pretty much a guaranteed reaction if this gets worse. But so far, we're not seeing it impact futures or supplies. I mean, let's be honest, if there's an excuse to elevate prices, these industries will probably do it, right? I think it's important to mention here too that pasteurization kills both viruses and bacteria, so there's not a likelihood of transmission via milk consumption. What should you be doing? So, this virus remains one we continue to monitor, and specifically, we would be looking for a sustained and significant person-to-person spread. And if that occurs, then yes, we have a major problem, but we're not seeing that yet. We are seeing the potential for a significant economic and food supply disruption, so we'll watch for signs of that. The culling of flocks and herds in the futures indexes. And we're not there yet, but we have to keep a vigilant watch on that. Even if we do get to that sustained person-to-person spread, I would put this more on par with the 2009 swine flu outbreak. The swine flu is also a subtype of influenza A virus that affects pigs that can occasionally spread to humans. Now, the H1N1 swine flu virus caused a pandemic in 2009, but it differs genetically from H5N1. In both viruses, they do belong to the influenza A genus, but are distinct strains with different origins and characteristics. And many people don't remember the swine flu outbreak, though it killed an estimated 12,000 people just in the United States alone, which is significant. It was a cause and concern for vigilance, but it was small and absorbed into the tens of thousands to over 60,000 flu-related deaths annually during severe flu seasons here in the United States. Now, this H5N1, it's not the swine flu, so let's put that aside for a moment. Look, with this headline-grabbing virus, there are precautions that you should take. If you, again, have a backyard flock, you should take extra precautions. And if you work in the food industry processing meat, poultry, eggs, or dairy, or you're around people who do, make sure you're practicing all the good practices we learned to keep ourselves healthy during the depths of COVID. You want to wash your hands frequently. You want to self-isolate if you feel ill. You want to get tested for the flu if you develop flu-like symptoms. This can tell you what strain of influenza you might have and can put your mind at ease if you have a more common flu variety. You also want to ensure that you have over-the-counter medications that you would need to take care of yourself if you do fall ill. You want to ensure that you have food and water on hand to get you through a prolonged indoor period. And look, these are the basics of what you should have in place regardless of your specific circumstances. These are just good items to have in general. And it's clear that every government agency and epidemiologist around the world will be really conservative about their assessments, even as they continue to say what they need to keep awareness in the public mind. Now, look, COVID caught these same specialists off guard, just like it did almost everyone else. And they don't want to be caught off guard again. So you can probably expect more warnings with each phase of the virus. And you can equally expect the mainstream media to grab onto every sensational piece of that and then blow it up even more, perhaps way out of proportion to the actual threat. And look, I don't want to do that here on this channel. I will continue to monitor this and alert you if things get too bad. And I have already told you what I'm looking for and what the indicators are. And I know, again, that we're all a little shell-shocked after COVID and we're all a little on edge, and rightfully so. And that was an experience that we hopefully only have to go through every 100 years or so, if even that. But the possibility of H5N1 or some other zoonotic virus wreaking havoc on us is a remote possibility. With each outbreak, we learn a little more about how these viruses spread and what you can do to prevent their spread. And if you're concerned about your level of preparedness for a pandemic, you might want to consult a video that we released on the subject even before COVID broke out, how to prepare for a pandemic, which I'll link to here on the side of the screen. That information contained in that video is still true today. And look, the manner in which to prepare for these inevitable events is still as valid as they ever were. As always, stay safe out there.